Welcome to a new episode of Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid Ahmed.
Welcome to another episode of Hacks and Hobbies. In this episode, we'll talk about our first month inspection. Now, it's been over a month since the colony was installed. I believe the day was April 19th, and this inspection that we recently did was May 27th. So, a good time over a month. We started with 5 frames, and now we had total installs of 20 frames. My mentor came by and we did an inspection through the Hive to see how it's doing. And we started with the top box. In the top box, we found lots of nectar. There's even some honey, capped honey, and there was some brood also in the top box. Since I had split up the initial brood frames and put half of them up in the top box and half of them in the bottom, the queen has been going around making the rounds and laying eggs everywhere. And then since we're doing checkered boxes to get the bees to draw out the other newer frames, there's brood and nectar next to each other, which is totally fine. When the brood hatches, the new adult bee come out, we will have them consuming the nectar, and then the queen bee can go in there and lay some more eggs. So in this inspection, we went through the top box, found the queen bee in the second box. Now, one thing that my mentor mentioned is that I probably need to replace my queen next year or later this year. And I asked him why. And he's like, well, the queen looks like she's over a year old, coming close to 2 years old. And although queens can live for 4-5 years, it's better to have a fresh queen every year so you have a good production, because younger queen bees will lay eggs faster, apparently. So I was like, okay, sure, that's not a bad idea. So we saw the queen bee, we put that frame aside, and then we went through the other frames and looked, and there was a lot of brood, a lot of capped brood, meaning that there's um, bees pupating in there, ready to come out within the next few weeks. Now, once brood, once there's capped brood, you have anywhere from 14 to 21 days before we know that there is any, before we see new bees coming out. The other thing that we did with the hive was we switched the entrance reducer from the small setting to the medium setting. So now the bees have more opening, more bees can come in and go out, as opposed to only 2 bees going in and out at a time. Since the colony is doing very well, um, my mentor was very happy to see its growth. We also saw some drone um, drone cells being drawn out and or filled in, and capped drone brood actually. So he said, let's pry open some of these cells and see if there's any mites, because that's another big thing that you want to check. And he said the reason that you want to check the drone caps for mite is because the varroa mites like to live in right, very much like the drone capped cells, because drones take about 24 days, which is, even though it's 3 extra days, it equates to about 2.4 additional mites, or 2 mites per drone cell. So that's one way to keep an eye on the cells or your mites. So we pry opened some cells, and we saw the white pupa that the eggs had become, the larvae had become, and it looked beautiful. Um, Took some out and took a look at them, and they were clean. So fingers crossed, we're doing good so far. I'll probably have to do a mite count later this month or maybe next month, just so we know we have it under a good threshold. So we looked through that. I also added a few things to the hive. I added a stand, even though the hive is set up on top of 2 bars of plywood above ground on top of bricks. I figured it's not too bad to have a hive stand there. That way, the bees have a landing place. They don't crash down or whatever. So we set up that. We've got the bottom bracket. I also added slatted frames, which increases or reduces bearding on the hive. It would look pretty nice right now if I did not have a slatted frame, because the hive is so huge, or the colony size has grown. I didn't ask how many bees might be in there, but I know there's a lot of bees in there. The other thing the slatted frames enhances or enables the bees is to draw out the comb much deeper, and enables the queen to lay eggs in the entirety of the frame on the bottom frames at the bottom. Then we also added another 10 frames on top, and added some nectar frames in the top one from the main hive to enable and promote drawing the cell of the new frames that we put in. The other thing that I could do is spray a brood booster on these new frames. It's known to help the bees drop the wax on it much faster than if it was just a dry frame. So those are the little things we did. I also added sugar water and their feed on top, which probably is already empty by now. Looks like they go through 1 quart of feed in about 2 days. So if I were to, and that's something that my mentor mentioned, that I can totally place 4 or 5 quart bottles in there, and rest them on top of 2 dowels, so the bees can just come underneath, get their feed on, and then go back down into the hive. So that's something I need to look into doing. I just have 1 feeder bottle. I'll need to acquire some more and get that set up. So the hive is sitting quite tall. It's got a full 4 boxes. The 3 boxes is for the brood, and the 4th box on top helps cover up any, basically discourages robbing of the food, even though it's not easily accessible. But again, It's good for the hive. So that's why we got set up. The hive is looking good, and I'm looking to get another hive this coming weekend. So that's what we did over this weekend. Um, Learned a lot of good things, a lot of cool things, like adding additional feed, and I can just rest the bottles on top of dowels instead of drilling holes into the top cover. Although I have seen other people with modified top covers, they just replace the top cover with um, to just use a different top cover when they're feeding versus when they're not feeding. The other thing that he mentioned is that I have enough bees in there to throw in a queen excluder and even harvest some honey this year. But I am taking it slow this time around, just so the bees have enough food to overwinter, and then I can introduce a new queen. Probably, we'll see what happens next year. So that's it. That's the update for this weekend. Check out the next episode where I continue with some bee education. It's been a really good season. The pollen is in the air. I see a lot of new um, flowers blooming, even though, yes, we're still in spring, so summer's coming in about a month, and the weather has been pretty stable for that matter. Anyways, let's see what else we have on the docket. So here are some of the things that I learned from this inspection. Number one, use wooden dowels underneath the quart, boxes, the quart feeding jars, so you can have more than just one jar sitting on top of the round hole. Number two, you can always check capped drone brood for varroa mites, since they like to live in there. Number three, you replace the queen every year. That way you reduce swarming of the queen, swarming of the hive every year. Because it's the old queen that wants to swarm. They're like, all right, there's lots of babies here. Let's go create a new colony. And essentially, you can take the queen, put her in a nuke box, and let her go to town and think that now she's in a new place. Number four, slatted bottoms help draw out the eggs, or help the queen bee lay eggs throughout the frame in the bottom box. Plus, it creates a place for the worker bees to hang out. Number four, remove the bottom cover below your screen, bottom bracket, bottom cover. Yeah. So right now my bottom cover has a little catcher under the screen net to catch and look for mites and other things that are happening in the hive. So it helps to remove that during hot days, so they have good ventilation going on. 5 good points. I hope you guys had a good listening moment. Hopefully there was some good information in this episode. Please subscribe, continue to listen, and please send me a message and let us know what we can do better. If you have any questions, with our next episode we'll continue to talk about bee biology and bee colony management and all the different things that go on in a beehive.